So good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. For those that don't know me, my name is Dahun Kende, and really great to have you all today. I'm so excited about today's interview because we have two amazing guests with us. For those that are very familiar with what's going on in the entertainment space, you should know that a few weeks ago, end of February of 2024, Disney premiered Iwaju on their platform Disney Plus.
I laugh in the face of danger.
I didn't hear you laugh.
And for those that don't know Iwaju, it's an animated series focused on futuristic Lagos, Nigeria. And I'm super excited to say that today I have two of the founders, two out of the three founders with me, and we're going to be talking all about Iwaju. We're going to be learning more about the story, and I'm so excited about it. So please help me welcome Tolu and Hamid to today's session. So thank you, Tolu. Thank you, Hamid, for being here. How are you both doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Awesome. So I'm just going to dive straight to it. I'll say my first question, or before I dive into the question, actually, when I first heard about Iwaju coming to Disney Plus, I think that was like 2 years ago. I was so excited because I'm also from Nigeria. I'm a Lagosian. I mean, I'm actually from Ogun State, Ijebu-Ife, but I grew up in Lagos, and I thought this was so exciting for our culture to be celebrated on such a, should I say, worldwide platform like Disney. So that got me so excited, and I was actually watching the documentary that was released about you all on Disney Plus. Of course, I've watched Iwaju, I've watched it twice, but I was also watching the documentary, and I remember the president of Disney Animation, that's Clark Spencer, and Jennifer Lead, who is the chief creative officer of Disney Animation, mentioned that this is the first time that they will be doing such a collaboration in Disney's over 100 years of existence. So the big question I have for you all is, how did you feel for you all to be pioneers of something this big?
So I was thinking of it more like extra motivation in a way, in that you cannot drop the ball now. You literally can't, right? It's because when you're doing something that's going to make history, it's either good history or bad history. It's never forgotten. It's never just something that disappears. So there was a good amount of motivation to do it right. And then the second bit was, the reason we started Kugali was actually to tell authentic African stories in the highest visual quality we could. And this was literally, I could feel we are on touching distance. That was before Iwaju was completely made, obviously. That's right around the announcement time when we're just creating it, let's say. We're still pitching it and everything. And it was that thing of like, oh my God, I'm actually going to hit the goal I had when I was planning, when I wanted to make Kugali as a company, which was a really weird question for me because I already hit my own personal goals. That was back in 2017, where my personal goal was to work on a big Hollywood film, and I worked on a few films. And then I was like, oh, let me start my own thing with a goal to tell Africa stories in the highest possible quality. And like 3 years later, I've hit that goal already. So it was like, oh my God, this is like, either I'm the luckiest person alive or just, like everything is just on a good roll. So that was more of my experience.
Wow, that's awesome. Tolu, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, for me, it was very interesting because it's like my main goal was to make a AAA video game. And so that's like the video game, that's like the equivalent of a blockbuster movie in the gaming world. And on the way to that journey, I've ended up hitting what I would have called bonus goals because I've been drawing comics since I was like 5 years old. And then I ended up starting Kugali, which publishes comics. And I've also been doing animation since I was about 10 or 11. I didn't even realize at the time that that was what I was doing. Like I was animating. I would just draw characters in Microsoft Paint, export the images into PowerPoint, and using the PowerPoint animations, I would make the images move. And I was just creating stuff that way. I didn't quite think of it that way, like, hey, I'm animating. But the thing, I wanted to make video games, and I'm still on that journey. But on the way there, I've ended up doing all the other things I would have loved to do as well, and already doing it at the highest possible level. And Kugali is just, we're turning 7 years old this year. So it's been amazing. achieving this level of success this fast. It was always our target. We knew we were going to get here. We didn't know how. We were working it out as we went ahead. But this was always the target, to tell stories in visual storytelling mediums such as video games, animation, and comics, and to tell them at the highest possible quality. That had always been the target. But I think we're blessed to have been able to hit the target so quickly. And we're still going because we still have so much more we want to do. I mean, there is no AAA video game out there with my name on it yet. So.
Yeah, so that's still coming. No, this is awesome. And there was something you mentioned, Hamid, and Tolu, you also mentioned it in the documentary. You said you wanted to be able to tell an authentic African story because a lot of times people tell the African story, but most of the time those people are non-Africans. But something I would say is that I really loved the authenticity in Iwaju from the accent.
1, 2. You have power.
I'll be honest, I've watched multiple movies about Africa where they try to do the accents. I'm like, come on, we don't talk like that. I mean, maybe we talk close to that, but we don't really talk like that. But I really love the authenticity. Besides the accent, some of the slangs that were being used, like Nawao or Ogaju, Ajebota. Those are things that really connected me to the culture again.
Oh, never we can rub it with this now.
Detail, even like the food.
It's like Gigi bread.
Because I know you had puff plantain chips. Tola and Kole also went to the buka, they ate abula. Like I can keep going on and on, even from the animals in the animation. We had the agama lizard. When I was watching Iwaju, I'm like thinking about it. I haven't seen an agama lizard since I've been in the US, so it just really connected me to when I was back home. So the big question I have for you is, and I say this question is for Tolu because I know you were the cultural consultants. What did it take on your end to make sure that you were able to gather every little detail of our culture and pass it on to Disney? Because you developed this story with Disney, right? And most of the people you were working with are people that had never been to Lagos or probably maybe have never been to Africa before. So what did it take to make sure that every detail was considered, basically?
So to give some background on why I particularly was well suited to that role, I have this attention to detail that was hammered into me because my dad has this very high attention to detail. And if you tell my dad, hey, I went, look what happened in school today, you can't tell him what you would tell most people and get away with it. He'll ask you so many questions. You then need to be able to answer like, oh, the room was about 10 meters by 5 meters wide. There were about 48 people in the room. I'm not exaggerating. That like you need to know details that most people wouldn't bother with. So with that kind of upbringing, when we started making comics, I would lead the editorial team, and sometimes I'll look at our comics and maybe the creator is Nigerian. For example, I'm thinking of one particular comic where the creator is Nigerian, but he was based in the UK. So he had a Nigerian artist draw something, and I was looking at the page and I was like, something feels off, but I can't tell what it is. It feels off. And I eventually realized the character is wearing a coat. We don't wear coats in Nigeria. Nobody wears.
Too hot.
Yeah, so like, but the person who wrote it and the person who drew it were both Nigerian, and they didn't spot that because influence from living in the UK. So I'm just saying, I had that acumen for fixing those type of problems. So working with Disney Animation, who wanted to get it right, it wasn't a battle. Disney Animation wanted to be authentic. They asked so many questions. If a character was wearing a red shirt in Iwaju, Disney Animation would, even though Hamid was leading the visuals and Hamid and some artists would have designed the character's look, Disney Animation would still ask me, this character is wearing a red shirt. Does red have any significance in Nigerian culture? I mean, to that level of detail. So they wanted to get it right. And Hamid wanted to get it right. He's Ugandan, and he's also lived some of his life in Kenya. So he has the eye of an African who can look into Nigeria and see this particular thing is specifically Nigerian. I didn't see it in Uganda and Kenya and other places in Africa I've been to. This is Nigerian. So Hamid was able to detect things that I wouldn't detect because, for example, I've been in Lagos all my life. I might get used to some things and think that's normal. But then Hamid comes to Lagos and he's in a moving vehicle and he's counting the rhythm of the buildings that we're going past. Like, how many short buildings do you see before you see one tall building? Just so that he can replicate that in the show. I wouldn't have thought of doing that. So I'm saying all this to point out that I feel I was particularly well suited to the role, but it also helped that I had teammates like Hamid and the people at Disney Animation who actually wanted to do it properly. So it was to like collaborate and get this right.
Wow, that's awesome. And by the way, kudos to you, Tolu, on that, because I remember in the documentary you had mentioned that people will say, Tolu, you had one job. You didn't want people to end and say like, oh, you tried, Sha. I'll tell you, you didn't just try, Sha. You did a phenomenal job. Like the detail was amazing, even down to the hawking, right? When Tola was going to pick her father up from the airport and the drones came, I mean, the hawkers that had their drones came by and they were like, fine girl, do you want pop-up or do you want, like, because this is literally what goes on. So that was really awesome. So the next question I have is, so what inspired you all to create the story Iwaju? Because it was centered on kidnapping, and I definitely understand that there are many reasons why we want to create awareness for kidnapping, but I was curious to know why that was the specific focus, and also the futuristic aspect of Lagos, the technology. So what were some of the reasons behind those two things in the story?
Speak on the story and Hamid will speak on the technology. So
Yep.
I'm speaking of Fikayo because he's the one who wrote the story. And before we even got this opportunity to collaborate with Disney Animation, Fikayo had always, he relocated to the UK when he was about 15. So coming from Nigeria to the UK, he already had a part of him that wanted to show his friends in the UK what his hometown was like. And he also, maybe more than 10 years ago, he had a friend who almost got kidnapped. So that experience was, he knew he wanted to tell a thriller story around that topic one day. He also knew he wanted to tell a story set in Lagos one day. And we started Kugali. We started as a podcast in 2015. But sometime in 2016, we wrote a blog post exploring, we had seen some futuristic depictions of Africa in the media, some from places like Black Panther, and some from, artists just doing artist impressions. And we had thoughts about it, like, okay, some of these people designing this futuristic Africa are not even African. They don't really know some of the nuances. So we had written an article, and that article planted a seed in Fikayo's mind where he knew he would one day want to tell a story set in a futuristic location in Africa, but focus on the real life things about that place that makes it what it is. So those are three different threads. He knew he wanted to tell a story in Lagos. He knew he wanted to tell a kidnapping story. And he knew he wanted to tell a story set in a futuristic location in Africa. All three of those were different ideas already in his head before we met with Disney Animation. When we met with Disney Animation and they started talking about, and we started having conversations about collaboration, they asked us to pitch multiple stories. So we worked on multiple pitches where typically Fikayo would write the actual story, Hamid would design the world building and the visuals, and then depending on the story, I might do something else. For example, for Iwaju, Hamid and I brainstormed a lot of the tech together, and I also brought in Nigerian culture because Fikayo is more based in the UK now and not as in touch with the culture as I am. But when he created the pitch for Iwaju, he brought all these three different ideas that were already floating around in his head and put them together in one story. And it happened, then that was one of the stories we pitched to Disney Animation. We pitched two other stories, but Iwaju was the one they selected to go ahead with. So Hamid will talk about how we designed the tech in this world.
Yes. So in terms of But it's gonna be a visual one, right? They're showing me on screen on YouTube.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, this is the most tired I'm gonna look ever online. I'm this. Uh, I've been fighting my eyes from shutting for the last 3 hours at the moment,
Oh,
but still going strong. So in terms of the tech in Iwaju, uh, Tolu mentioned we did a lot of brainstorming, but even before we go to that point, I had a lot of thought I was giving into it, and I wanted to approach it from a very different philosophical perspective, which was if you look at a lot of sci-fi today, the way they achieve their goals of futurizing a place is they'll look at sci-fi tropes and then they would look at the place and try and merge those together. That's usually the approach. Whereas in my end, I wanted it to be a very, very different approach. I wanted it to be like, okay, what is this place like? And what's the thing that is the soul of the place? Now, how do we push that to the future instead? So, in other words, the Iwaju world we built today will not look like it's not what we think Lagos will look like in 100 years. It's almost like a parallel of okay, this is what Lagos might be 100 years if everything is happening as it is right now. I don't know if that made sense. Sleepy Hamid is trying to make sense. Uh, so that was more the philosophical approach of it is how do we maintain the soul of it and just grow the soul of it? I'll give an example. Maybe that will help. So in our world, as you mentioned, we had the hawkers on the drones, right? Now, maybe in the future, they're no longer hawkers at all. But in our world, we kept the hawkers with drones because that's something that's very, as you mentioned, when you're in Lagos, Nigeria, it's something you feel. I mean, Uganda, we have hawkers, but not like Lagos hawkers, right? It's a very different feeling. And that's something that would capture the soul of a place. If somebody who has been in Lagos, they'll be like, oh my God, that's Lagos. So we wanted to maintain all those things as much as we can and just futurize them so that they can kind of, one, merge with our story, which if you notice, the hawkers are up in the air, the rich people are flying with the cars up there, and then you have people on the ground stuck in traffic. We wanted to try and maintain the themes of the story and futurize the soul of Lagos, Nigeria.
That's awesome. No, yeah. So like basically you were working to keep, should I say the details, the nitty-gritty things about the culture, but still trying to, of course, make it futuristic in its own way. Yeah, so my next question is actually for you, Hamid. I watched the documentary twice because I really loved it, honestly. And there was something your mom said that really,
She just came out.
yes, struck me.
I'm at her place right now.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah, there was something she said. She had mentioned, okay, you had always been passionate about drawing from a young age, and when it was time for you to go to university, you both were talking to, I believe, one of the university admins, and the person was asking what you were going to study, and she's like, engineering, and of course, all these things that African parents want their kids to study. And the person stopped her that, okay, I was asking him. So the first question I have for you is, what did you end up studying in school? I tried to do some stalking on LinkedIn, but I didn't find that. So I want to ask you, then I'll ask my follow-up question after that.
Okay, so I studied, but this was college, not uni. This was in college. I know it's different from different places. College is uni in a lot of places. In the UK, college and uni are two different things. So this was in
really?
college. And then I studied in West Ham's College, and then university, it was University of Hertfordshire. So that's in terms of the
Okay.
place. Yes. And then you want me to go into detail. In terms of the feeling of it, obviously, the moment the lady said that, uh, if I was white, I would have been pale. Let's put it that way. Just because I'm in Africa, right? That's something you don't expect. And then that's number one. And number two, I had it was almost like a double problem because if I'm one of the smart kids, I'm the one people are looking forward to, like, that's our doctor. Because I'm on top of the class. Like when I was in back home, I was top of the class and everything. Now, usually people who do the arts and people who are not top of the class in the physics, math, etc., are
Yes.
top of the class in physics and math. So everybody's thinking for me in that kind of perspective. So it's even slightly heavier weight, where this kid who in Uganda was top of the class went to UK, and the first thing they're going to study is going to be what most Africans would call, he's going to be drawing cartoons. That's what they would say, right? So it is a very hard one to navigate in terms of the environment and the family and everything. Luckily, even if mom didn't understand it, obviously it was coming from a place of love. She was still supportive, but you could tell she was not as comfortable with the path. It was a scary path for her in terms of seeing her son because she wants me to succeed. And from an African perspective, you don't really see much success from that angle.
Yes. Well, just to clarify, so what was the degree called? I know you said it was in cartoons, but what was it called?
So the college one was called 3D animation and game design, and then the union
Okay.
one was called 3D modeling and animation. Yes.
Oh, I see. And just to clarify, so college is basically what you did right after high school.
Yes, that would be a good way to look at it.
Okay.
College is like A levels. So right after
Okay.
high school, think of that as college, and then you have university.
I
I see. Okay. Yeah. So this brings me to my follow-up question because you ended up studying something in 3D animation and design, if I'm say wording that properly. So the question I have for you is what's your advice for people who want to study something atypical? The reason I ask this is because I'm actually a career coach myself, and I usually advise people to study something very lucrative, like do the engineering, do the accounting, and you can pursue your passion on the side. So, for example, I'm an engineer. Even though I'm passionate about content creation, I do that on the side. However, there are people that succeed in doing the atypical stuff. Like example for you, you're doing well, even though you went to school in 3D animation. I think even Lupita Nyong'o, if I'm remembering correctly, I think she studied drama as well. And now she's this influential person. So what would be your advice for people that are passionate about the arts, want to study the arts in school, and are just skeptical because maybe they're getting pressure from the African parents about doing the engineering, becoming a doctor? I really think it's just worth you just sharing that because I'm curious to know if there were things you were doing behind the scenes to put in extra effort so that you stand out.
Yes. This answer, I don't know if I'm gonna. I may make everybody angry with this answer because it's kind of like on everybody's lane. In that, I agree with you to a degree for some people, and I agree, for example, with my approach. The only reason I went down with it was what I would say the advice would be is one, you pick the path, don't cry about the path later on. Like
mm,
like you can't pick like, oh my God, I want to climb Mount Everest, and then you are almost at the top and you're crying. It's so cold. What did you expect? Right? I think I was talking to
yeah,
somebody, was it 2 days ago? 2 days, I was in Uganda 2 days ago, actually. Yeah, so it was 2 days ago. Right before I flew here, I was having a meeting with somebody, and they're telling about, man, they were complaining about a lot of stuff to do with the animation sector. And I was like, nobody told you something. Matter of fact, they told you to do something different. You picked the path, so you have to dance the dance of the path you picked. So that's number one. You have
yeah,
to be willing to live in the realities of being an artist versus just wanting to the glory of being an artist. That's number one. Number two, my general approach was just in everything I do. Tolu will tell you this. If it's difficult and stressful, I know that means most people will not be able to go through with it. So it's a good marker to know that you're going to leave a lot of people behind. You're going to step in front of a lot of people. So, for example, in uni or even in college before I even went to university, right? In college, my goal was I was going to get a distinction in every single lesson I do, every single class, whether I liked it or not, right? That was
mm,
a goal. And the reason was because I left all levels in Africa, in Uganda, before I did the final exams because I had to join my mom. So I knew my grades were lower. So I was like, how can I compensate for that? I was like, let me get the best grade in every single thing. So imagine it's an A plus in every single module. Now that was very
mm,
difficult to do, but I was like, okay, that's what is needed. When I was in uni, I was not comparing my portfolio and my work to people who are in undergrad or masters even, or compared to people who are the best in the world. So I'll be like, okay, this is how they are, this is where I am. And a lot of the times, even in the university, I remember nobody had done muscle simulation before and it succeeded. Everybody was like, oh, it all breaks down. And I was like, no, I'm
mm,
gonna do it. And a lot of people, like, there's a lot of people are gonna advise you not to do the risky thing. And it's that thing of like, okay, if you're gonna do it, they're advising you for a very good reason. They're not advising you
mm,
because they hate you. They're advising you because it's a whole hell of a path. Now,
yes,
with me and the master simulation, I knew I had a lot of sleepless nights, which I did not deserve. But at the end of it, it worked. And I guess that's one of the big things that actually contributed to my career in terms of working in Hollywood films happening. So if you're going to go to a career path which is non-ordinary, expect non-ordinary problems.
mm,
Now, you might get non-ordinary successes, but that is not guaranteed. But what is guaranteed is non-ordinary problems, and it's your choice. So depending on your risk appetite, right? You can pick a safer route, which is the one you did, right? Which is a lot
yes,
more safe, a lot more knowledge, like let me call it a more wiser route in a way. But because of the route you pick, there are a lot of things maybe you could have done better in the creative sense. But because you're doing two different opposing things in a way, you cannot do it quite as well. That's the downside of the route you pick, right? Now,
Yes.
on my route, I can specialize on this as much as I can. But the issue is now I have no stable ground to stand on technically, right? So it's like there's nothing to catch me when I fall, but I have enough effort and time to focus on this and really drill into it. Whereas the route on the other side, the safer one, you have something to stand on and fall. If you fall, you're gonna
Yeah.
get caught. But you're not gonna be able to dedicate as much time as you would on the craft you'd love to.
I agree. Yeah, but to what you said, Hamid, I guess the lesson there is just really you need to be aware of the risk before you start, right? So that as you go through the journey, you are going full in and you're ready to tackle the things that come your way. But as we round up, I actually have two more questions. So there was something that you all said that we are going to kick Disney's ass in Africa. I really love that statement because that's actually what brought your company to the limelight. So I'm curious to know what vision you have for Iwaju and for Kugali Media as a whole, because I know that's a big statement because Disney, like you said in the interview, Hamid, that Disney is like the granddaddy of animation, right? So I'm curious what the vision you have for Kugali Media is, because I'm really excited to hear about that.
So I'm the one who said the statement of I was gonna kick this ass in Africa. And the way that came out is there's a line of questioning that when somebody goes down, I start getting riled up. And that line is along the lines of the fact that there's no match. Like if you go to a random person, tell me three African stories. Maybe you'll get Black Panther, which is not truly African, right? That's more of a diaspora look inside Africa. It's not from Africa. Maybe you get Shaka Zulu, right? It's very rare somebody can give you three of them. And if you think about the whole continent of Africa, with all the cultures we have, all the stories we had, it always burnt my soul that how can we have all of this? But number one, there's nothing we have done that's worldwide that has crossed the barrier that much. Number two, all these big companies, that's why I called out Disney, right? All these big companies, all the resources, and they're not gonna put money into telling these unique stories here, which are amazing. In my head was like, inevitably, if they don't do that and we do it, at the end of the day, we're going to end up, as I said, kicking the asses because the stories are amazing and unique. And usually the world likes unique things. And it was in that time period. My mom is here nodding her head. I think I'm going
Yeah.
to end it there. Pretty much, we're going to look at a wedding venue. That's what we're going to do right now. So
Oh,
you can say hello to Mama. I don't know if she can hear you.
Yeah, hello, Ma. Good afternoon or good evening.
Eating.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you
yes.
for having me.
No,
I'll leave you with Tolu.
thanks again,
I'll run
Hamid.
right now.
Yeah, Tolu, I guess, yeah, I'll just hand over to you. Did you have anything to add to that before I go to the last question?
Yes. So the thing is, we from the get-go, we had always been very ambitious. With creating the company. Picture a kid, picture 10-year-old Tolu, watching anime. I watch Dragon Ball Z and Digimon, and these are, which is one small island in East Asia, but creates things that travel the whole world. Between the technology, they have car companies, they have animation companies, video game companies. And in the same way, I watched, Superman and Spider-Man and these things growing up, and these were made in the US and they travel the whole world. And because I loved these things so much, my favorite piece of entertainment is actually video games. I enjoy a great video game more than I enjoy a great movie or book.
Really?
Yes. And the Legend of Zelda series, every time I play a new Zelda game, I'm like, how did they manage to make something better than the previous one? Because I already thought the previous one was the best video game ever created. And then they make a new best video game ever created each time. I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to spend my life doing. I want to make video games that people will revere the way I revere the Legend of Zelda series. So this is my mindset, right? And Hamid has a similar mindset in animation, and Fikayo is a writer and he has a similar mindset in writing stories. The people who have created these things that we've been enjoying since we were children, they are people like us. So it never, growing up, it never occurred to me that I couldn't do it. I couldn't make a game of the caliber of Zelda. Never occurred to me because I was like, a person did that. I'm a person. I can do it. Like, it was that simple. So I wanted to make these things. I was too ignorant as a child to know what the limitations were, which was a blessing in disguise. I already had the vision set before I knew that, oh, nobody in Africa makes this content. There's no industry in Africa. The resources are not available in Africa. The tools. I didn't know all those when I had my vision defined. So once I got old enough to realize what all the limitations were, it wasn't a matter of changing my vision or my goals. It was a matter of, oh, well, we'll just scale all these hurdles. These are just roadblocks that we have to scale. And it was a very similar experience for both of my co-founders. That's why when we came together, Fikayo and I are childhood friends. We've known each other since 2001. Hamid, we met, I believe, early 2017 or late 2016. But when Hamid met us, he had spoken with a few other companies about his vision, and many of them were scared of the size. They were like, you know what? Let's do something small at first. Let's start with this and start with this before we get here. But when Hamid spoke with us, he saw that our ambition could accommodate his. We were not scared of it. Like, come on, yeah, why not? Let's do this. You're bringing a piece of the puzzle that we need. So we all then registered the company because we had been doing it since 2015, but we only registered it in 2017. So we all registered the company, and so the point is, we already had global ambitions. From the get-go, we wanted to do what we are doing at the highest level possible. That's why when in the documentary, when I said nobody's going to look at my work and say you tried, Sha, it's not just, I wasn't talking specifically about being a cultural consultant on Iwaju. I was talking about any work I put out. Before we met Disney Animation, we had put out comic books. When Disney Animation discovered us, when they saw that interview and heard what Hamid said, they went to our website and bought comic books. If they had bought the comic books and read them and thought, you know what, this is poor quality, that conversation would probably have ended there. But they read the comic books and they're like, this is actually good. So I feel like I don't want to ever create something where people are like, oh, support this Nigerian story because it's Nigerian. Because when I was watching Dragon Ball Z, I wasn't enjoying it because it was Nigerian. It's Japanese. I was enjoying it because it was awesome. So I want to create things that people will enjoy. No matter, in fact, the Legend of Zelda series that I talked about, the game is Japanese, but the world of the game is European. So the Japanese creators created a European world that somebody in Africa is playing and saying, this is the best thing I've ever played. So why am I, so we're not limited by like those things like, oh, it's just about the cultural representation. That is a good bonus. I'm happy that my work means so much to so many people around the world, and they say, oh, they are seeing themselves well represented on screen. That's a bonus. But for us, the guiding star is the quality. Is the work actually good? Is the quality actually world class?
No, yeah, that's really good. Wow. So quality, quality, quality. That's awesome. So as we round up, my final question is I just want you to just reflect on your journey so far because it's really inspiring. Like the three of you really inspire me so much. And I want to know what would be the top advice you would like to give our viewers.
Well, advice, I would summarize it in a phrase I love so much. I think that's how they closed out the documentary, actually. Dreams don't turn to dust. I've heard that phrase, a song by Owl City, and I just really love it because I'm like, I had childish dreams as a child, and as I grew older, the adults who had more wisdom and experience than me tried to encourage me, like what Hamid said, it's coming from a place of love. But they tried to encourage me to have more realistic dreams, right? And I just never let myself grow up in that way. Like I never had realistic dreams, and I still don't have realistic dreams. So, but when I say dreams don't turn to dust, the advice is what Hamid already said. Don't pick a path and then be complaining about the things that come with that path. So when I talk about quality, that's hard work. if I want to make a good video game, it's actually hard work. It's not like I'm just going to be playing all the days of my life and having fun. All the sacrifices we made to get to where we are, those were difficult. It took time, it took effort. So the advice I'll give to someone who wants to do something like what we are doing, keep your dream. Your dreams are valid, so keep dreaming. Don't be realistic with your dreaming. But the world doesn't owe you anything just because you're a dreamer. It's not going to fall in your lap. You have to actually put in the work. And that means learning. You have to learn, how does this thing work? How do I animate? How do I do this or do that or do this? I learned how to code. I taught myself how to code when I was 17 because I knew that I needed to code to make games. And I regret starting that late. I wish I had started teaching myself to code when I was 9 or 10. But at the end of the day, I think the advice would be, your dreams are valid, but you have to actually put in the work.
Wow, dreams don't turn to dust. You have to put in the work. That's amazing. And I'll say like persistence is key because you've been doing this for a very long time, right? You've been doing this, and I really love the persistence that the three of you had and how you kept on going. This is really awesome. So, wow, thank you so much, Tolu. I know Hamid is not here anymore, but thank you, Hamid. And of course, thanks, Ziki, as well. This was so awesome. And I'm really, really glad I got the opportunity to talk to you. And to our viewers, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm pretty sure that you all learned something. I did learn something from this interview. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, turn on your notification so that you don't miss out on any content that would be released in the future. So thank you all so much for watching, and make sure to share this video.